Hello? We're going to get started if everybody can take their seats. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody to the 2020 State of the Band. I'd like to start by introducing our spiritual advisor, Gene Goodsky, as he leads us through the opening ceremony. I'll ask everybody at this time to please put any devices on silent. I'd like to thank all the tribal leaders for attending today, our State of the Band. As I introduce, if you can just raise your hand so we can recognize each of you. Kevin Dupy from Fond du Lac. Farron Jackson, Leech Lake. Beth Drost, Grand Portage. Alan Roy, White Earth. Ray Aganash, White Earth. Steve White, Leech Lake. Thank you, Jean. I'd also like to say thank you and introduce our drummers today. We have Darren Langren, Lance Kingbird, George Strong, David Morrison Jr., Jordan Gobboy, Terry Goodsky, Jerome Whiteman, Virgil Somm, and Dan Lightfeather. Also a special thank you, and I'd like to recognize our honor guard, George Mihelich, Mike Mihelich, Fred McDougall, Steve Hurdig Goodsky, Adrian Whiteman, and Jean Goodsky. A couple of housekeeping items before we get too much further. For anybody that's never been to our property, welcome, thank you for coming. The restrooms, if you need, are out the door here. You'll go to the right, and before you hit the casino glass doors, they'll be on your right. There's packets on the table for everybody. Inside the packet, we have agendas, a survey, some updates from our tribal government directors, as well as lyrics for a song that we'll be playing later on in the program. I want to take this time to give a quick blurb about the census that's coming up. Please make sure that you're counted. The census affects us in many ways, including funding levels. It affects where we fix roads. It affects where we build schools and where we build hospitals. Historically, tribal nations are the most undercounted and underrepresented people. Also, if you're looking for employment, please contact Sidra Starkovich, our Director of Planning and Community Development. She has a lot of great opportunities to work with the census, and we'd really like our people to be counting our people. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce our Secretary-Treasurer, David Morrison, and welcome him to the stage.
Well, I'd like to say welcome to this afternoon's 2020 State of the Band address as we start a new decade. And we'd like to welcome you here to Fortune Bay on Vermilion Lake. And it's one of the most prized lakes that we have in the state of Minnesota, and it's a very good walleye lake. And so we'd like to invite you back later on this summer to do some of our fishing, and whatever we don't catch in our nets, we'll let you have. So, but other than that, I'd like to welcome everybody. And I was supposed to introduce the tribal leaders, but we've already done that. So, but we have some other dignitaries in the crowd that we'd like to introduce. And when I call your name, we'd like you to stand up and so we could acknowledge you. And first person is Rob Eklund, representative. Mr. Mark Phillips from IRRB. Wendy Stevens, our American bank that we do business with. Bill Spang, he represents the Northern State Bank of Ashland. Mary Otto, she's a tribal liaison for Department of Commerce. Raven Gibbs, Senator Smith's office. And as everybody knows, we lost our tribal attorney this past year. He passed away, Mr. Mark Anderson. And so Reed LeBeau, he's going to be our new tribal attorney that's going to be taking over the duties of Mark. And so I'd like to have Reed stand up and acknowledge. So you have we can put a face with the name. And again, I'd like to thank you for coming here and taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. And I also want to acknowledge the other tribal leaders that are here. And I know that all the hard work that being a tribal leader has to do to put in representing their bands and all the everything that goes along with it. It's a tough job. It's a hard job, and sometimes you have to be away from your families and your loved ones for a time being. But they do it for the heart of their people, and they always have the best interests of their band members as they go out and represent them, whatever it's state government, federal government, or the tribal nations that they come from. And I just want to thank those guys for taking the time to be here today with us, and as we start a new year. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jenna. But again, I apologize for not being able to introduce the tribal leaders. I really like working with these individuals, and been working with them now for a few years, and as you. Let's see here, lost nothing here. Anyway, but there's a lot of tribal chairmen here, and as you know, it's going to be an election year coming up with for the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, and so we want you to remember to get out there and vote for the choice of the people that you want to see represent the bands. And I know these tribal leaders that are here tonight really do an awesome job for representing their bands. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jenna. But again, welcome to this year's State of the Band, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Dave. We also want to recognize Ida Rukavina from Senator Klobuchar's office. And also Shannon Gijek, Executive Director for MIAC. We have a couple of videos today from guests that weren't able to make it. So first, I'd like to introduce via video today, Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Hello to everyone gathered for the Bois Forte State of the Band. I think you know I'd much rather be there with you in person, but there's just a few things going on right now, so I'm honored to join you via video. I'd like to thank your tribal chairwoman, Kathy Chavers, Secretary-Treasurer David Morrison, Representatives Morrison, Drift, and Boney, and of course all the men and women of the Bois Forte Band of Chippewa. This annual event demonstrates the strength of your community and your deep dedication to improving the lives of your members. It shows a commitment to make every year better than the last. I've always believed that Minnesota's strength comes from our people and the history and traditions of our tribes like Bois Forte. It is essential and a vibrant part of the life in our state. You're improving the state's economy through businesses like the Fortune Bay Resort and Casino, the Wilderness Golf Course, which once again made this year's Golf Digest list of top 100 courses in the country. I know because it is so beautiful, and it was listed as one of Golf Week's best of 2019. Congratulations. And you're an advocate for tribal issues like treaty rights, economic development, and sovereignty. Thank you for all you do to strengthen our state. That's why throughout my time in the Senate, I've worked to make sure your voice is heard. Time and time again, we've worked together. Our Native American tribes have a unique and sacred government-to-government relationships with the United States that is deeply rooted in treaties, the law, and the Constitution. This relationship demands a federal commitment to improving the health and well-being of our tribal communities. Sovereignty means continuing to protect funding for the Indian Health Service and programs like Head Start to address the disparity between tribes and non-Indian communities in health and education. We must also continue to work together to address the epidemic that we are experiencing with missing and murdered Indigenous women. 2019 saw Minnesota take one important step forward to stop this epidemic, thanks to the leadership of Representative Mary Kunesh-Podding, Governor Walz, and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who, by the way, is the highest-ranking American Indian to be elected anywhere in the United States of America, and many others. We now have a dedicated task force to help address the disproportionately high rates of violence against Indigenous women and girls. And I know that you are proud to have Panda Whiteman representing Bois Forte's voice on this important task force. Nationally, however, we must do more to bring attention to this issue and to address violence against Indigenous women. That's why it's so important that we reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act, commonly referred to as VAWA. I worked hard to reauthorize VAWA in 2013 and helped make sure that the legislation restored tribal jurisdiction over non-Indians who commit crimes of domestic violence on tribal lands. However, this authority only extended to crimes of domestic violence. The new VAWA bill that passed the House of Representatives last year, and the version that I've co-sponsored, strengthens tribal jurisdiction to include sexual violence, sex trafficking, stalking, child abuse, and violence against tribal law enforcement. This bill also helps to address the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women by improving tribal access to federal crime databases and supporting communication and coordination between tribal, federal, state, and local law enforcement. We can't move backward now. I'm working hard to get this done in the Senate. And you know where it's sitting? It's on Mitch McConnell's desk, along with 400 other pieces of legislation that we must pass. Help me get him to call this legislation up. I'll end with this. There's an Ojibwe saying that great leaders make decisions, not just for this generation, but for 7 generations from now. As I've traveled across the country over the past year, I've repeated this saying because I feel that this type of thinking is woefully lacking in Washington when it comes to our environment, when it comes to tribal issues, when it comes to our health care. The nation can and should heed your advice because working together, we can make sure this year and all the years after are even better than the last. Thank you for all you're doing. I look forward to visiting again soon. Enjoy the rest of today's event. Miigwech.
Hi, I'm Senator Tina Smith. So miigwech to the Bois Forte Band and to Chair Kathy Chavers for inviting me to join you at this year's State of the Band. Thank you, Chair Chavers, for your leadership and for your partnership, not just as chair of the Bois Forte Band, but also as president of the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe. As a member of the Senate Indian Affairs Committee, my role is to represent tribes and to bring your work, ideas, and solutions for your members forward. I feel a strong responsibility to lift up the voices of Minnesota's Ojibwe and Dakota nations, our urban Indigenous populations, and all sovereign tribal nations across the country. I believe that tribes know best how the federal government can best fulfill our obligations and trust responsibilities in Indian country. This year, I've heard from Minnesota Native communities about the importance of adequate funding for healthcare, education, law enforcement, and other essential services. So thanks to all of our strong advocacy, together we were able to get many of these priorities across the finish line. The annual spending bill passed by Congress includes new investments in tribal law enforcement and resources to address the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. We also increased funding for the Indian Health Service, and I helped secure the continuation of the Special Behavioral Health Pilot Program, which allows tribes to leverage their unique strengths and cultural resources to help individuals struggling with mental illness or substance abuse disorders. We have more work to do, but these are important victories. The federal government must fulfill its commitment to improve access to health care for Native people in Minnesota and across the country. And to be clear, the federal government is not living up to its trust responsibility when lapses in federal funding force tribes to suspend medical treatment and child care. That's why I co-sponsored Senator Udall's legislation that would authorize advance resources for programs and services within the Indian Health Service and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I also want to thank the Bois Forte Band for sending tribal program representatives to attend my housing listening sessions in Bemidji and Duluth. And thanks to Councilmember Morrison for participating in my listening session at the Minnesota Indian Housing Conference. It is so valuable to hear firsthand from you about how the affordable housing crisis impacts your communities. With some of these challenges in mind, I worked with Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska to introduce a bill to make sure that tribes can apply for federal funds to fight homelessness. I also worked with Republican Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota to reduce barriers to home ownership on trust land. So I look forward to working with Chair Chavers and with all of you to continue to make sure that all families have a safe, stable place to call home. My work in the Senate is guided by a deep respect for your rights to tribal sovereignty, self-determination, and self-governance. The federal government's trust responsibility to tribal nations is a legal and moral obligation, one I will do all I can to make sure that we live up to. There is so much more work to be done, and I'm here today to commit to working shoulder to shoulder with you in this fight for justice, freedom, and opportunity for all Native people. So thank you again. I'm honored to serve with all of you, and I hope that you have a great State of the Band.
And lastly, we have a video message from Governor Walz.
Hello, everyone. I'm honored to share a few words with you as you gather today for the Bois Forte Band of Chippewa's State of the Band. Earlier this month, we reached the one-year milestone of our administration, and we're eager to continue building on our work of meaningful government-to-government partnerships with the tribal communities and nations here in Minnesota. I would like to thank Chairman Chavers and the leaders of Bois Forte for your leadership and input over the past year. Meaningful consultation with all 11 tribal governments is critical to our success as leaders of this state, and we are fully invested in deepening the partnership with Bois Forte and its members as we collectively work to advance the well-being of Native people across the state of Minnesota. Over the past year, we've traveled across the state to hear from the people, communities, and tribal nations directly affected by the decisions made by state government in order to help us craft our budget and identify policy priorities. We're grateful for the time Bois Forte leaders and members spent with us in this process. We're particularly grateful for your partnership as we've worked government to government to get a lot of good work done this past year. I signed Executive Order 1924, which guides how state government interacts with tribal nations. This executive order affirms the state's recognition of tribal sovereignty and requiring all state agencies to designate tribal liaisons. As part of that commitment, the state agency commissioners, along with governor's office staff, attended the 2-day tribal state relations training, which is a first for our state. This past legislative session, we passed major new investments for Native communities across Minnesota. One of the bills that I was most proud to sign into law was the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Task Force. The time for action on this critical issue is now. While the past year has brought real results, we are looking to build something that lasts long after we're gone. With your partnership, we aim to set up the systems and structures necessary to ensure that government-to-government relationship is healthy, just, and strong, and that Indian country prospers. Because when Indian country does well, the rest of the state does well. Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan and I are honored to continue building this partnership with Chairwoman Shavers and the Bois Forte Band of Chippewa. Thanks, and I hope to see you all soon.
Smith and Governor Walz. At this time, it's my honor to introduce and ask to the stage Chairwoman Shavers.
Bushu Anin, Kathy Chavers, Indigenous Cause, Ogama Kwe. I'm very honored and humbled to be here today to present the 2020 State of the Band Address. Before beginning, I would like to take this opportunity to say Chimigwich to our spiritual advisor, Mr. Gene Goodsky, the drum group, our warriors who are our servicemen and women, our honored guests, elders, youth, and tribal members here and at home. We are broadcasting the 2020 State of the Band on YouTube live, so members at home and at our tribal government building may watch the State of the Band. Also, too, if I could ask if everybody could please give a round of applause to our staff and departments who have organized and participated in this event today. It does take a large amount of planning and time, along with a lot of aspirin or Tylenol for the headaches that go with it. Miigwech to our staff. Good job. I will now begin with the Bois Forte Band's State of the Band Address. As I stand here before you today, I think about how we were in the past and where we are today. Our tribe has made many great strides with guidance and visions of our past leaders. We have many accomplishments, along with some failures in our journey, but we must continue to move forward for the next 7 generations to come. To continue this journey, we as a band and a tribe must be proactive and persistent with our mission to continue to enhance programs and services, be fiscally responsible, and be accountable and transparent. We must also continue to educate local, state, and federal agencies and legislators and the government as well. We must be at the table rather than behind the doors. We as tribal leaders have the obligation to the band to be a voice and present when the opportunity arises for funding and change to legislation that will bring additional revenue and services and strengthen our sovereignty and rights as Native people. As you recall, the 2019 State of the Band Address was delayed until April 2019 due to the federal government shutdown. The shutdown was the longest ever government shutdown in U.S. history that impacted Bois Forte in many ways. It brought the reality that in the event this happens again, and it probably will at some point in the future, that Bois Forte will be prepared and ready to meet this challenge. Since the end of the shutdown, the Bois Forte government directors, along with the Tribal Council, have developed a standardized plan in phases if and when the words shutdown are ever mentioned from the federal or state government. Phase 1 of this plan was actually implemented this past December, and travel restrictions, spending limitations began. It wasn't until a federal budget was signed in December that ended Phase 1. Again, we are being proactive. In addition to the standardized plan, the need for building a financial emergency fund was implemented by the Tribal Council. One of the ways for funding this is utilizing the wayfare tax that was implemented in Minnesota in October of 2018, after the Supreme Court ruling in favor of the state of South Dakota versus wayfare. These funds to Bois Forte are currently not budgeted in any manner in the tribal government, so it has no impact on our overall budget. This fund is approximately $500,000, and we are very proud to say that we continue to put funds into that fund. The tribal government even passed a resolution that this fund can only be accessed when all 5 tribal council members agree to disperse the funds. Not a majority, but all 5. Accountability and transparency are 2 words that Bois Forte has taken a serious look at. We have made improvements in this area by not only broadcasting our tribal council meetings and State of the Band on YouTube, but have now expanded it to our community meetings in Nett Lake and Vermilion. At our community meetings, tribal members who are either watching from home or wherever they can are sending their questions in and getting answers. To be accountable, though, you must follow through with what you're going to say you're going to accomplish. Approximately 2 years ago, the Tribal Council wanted the band membership to see a 15-year report of the monies received from Fortune Bay revenue that was paid to the tribal government for programs and services. We are happy to announce that report is now complete for band members, and if you are attending today's State of the Band, you have received your copy. For those who couldn't attend today, yours will be mailed. The allocation of gaming revenues has benefited all tribal members in one way or another. From programs to our youth, culture and language, elders, and enhancing our current programs and services to better serve our band members and their families. Each year, from this year forward, this financial accountability of Fortune Bay revenue to the tribal government will be added to our yearly financial presentation at the State of the Band. I am also very happy to say, contrary to rumors, that Bois Forte is not in a financial crisis, but we are doing quite well. We are being fiscally responsible and not doing any unnecessary or outrageous spending. We are also partnering with the Minnesota Area Indian Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Joanne White Rabbit, who is the executive director in what's called the Purchasing Power Initiative. This enables tribes to have access to vendors that help reduce costs of items purchased on the government side and at Fortune Bay. As an example of this, if all the tribes in Minnesota combine together to purchase slot machines from a vendor on this site, the more you buy, the less it costs. And this would be a cost savings to the tribe. And we can do that in various aspects through this Purchasing Power Initiative. The Bois Forte Tribal Code has now been, the Bois Forte Tribal Code has now been completed. And we are now in the process of having it on our website for public comment. And this code has never been updated for quite some time. And it has taken years of resolutions to go through and add to this tribal code. We did get funding from the Department of Justice to complete this project. And we're very happy to say that it also includes new laws and legislation such as the Violence Against Women's Act, the Tribal Law and Order Act, to name just a couple. This has been a huge task and accomplishment for Bois Forte. Our law enforcement's hands were tied at times because a particular situation was not addressed in our code. This will make our community safer and enable law enforcement to carry out the law. We are currently close to updating our Bois Forte Code of Ethics. This was implemented in October of 1998, and since then has not been updated. However, it states in the code it will be updated annually. A committee established of band members has been working on the code since 2017. These band members are volunteering their time and will soon have a new code available for public comment that will incorporate procedures and timelines along with decision-making, which should not be the Tribal Council making the ultimate decision. Bois Forte continues to make land acquisitions one of our priorities. We were fortunate to be selected in the Cobell Land Buyback Program. This program allowed Bois Forte tribal members the opportunity to sell their fractionated land interests back to Bois Forte. It was entirely the decision of the band members if they wanted to participate or not. Although the final figures are not compiled yet, Bois Forte had 53% participation, which resulted in 2,815 acres sold back to Bois Forte, one of the highest percentages with regards to this program. Through the MCT, a resolution passed by the Tribal Executive Committee in 2018 to transfer title of the MCT lands back to the prospective tribes. Behind me, you will see a map, and marked in yellow is the land that is currently titled to the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, which is in Bois Forte reservation boundaries. The tribes have each been allowed to manage these lands and would like to have title to them as well. This title transfer has to be done by legislation of the U.S. Congress. I am happy to say that the bill has been drafted, with Congressman Pete Staubers authoring the bill, and a letter was sent to Congressman Colin Peterson to co-author this bill also. We need everyone's supports and calls to Congressman Peterson's office to encourage him and let him know the importance of this bill to Bois Forte and the other tribes. If passed, Bois Forte would acquire 32,800.81 acres of land in our title name, Bois Forte. We need your support and calls on this very important issue. When I mention land acquisition, legal codes, I think of a great man, friend and colleague. He is a Bois Forte band member, known throughout Indian country for his expertise and knowledge in Indian law. He was well respected by all tribal leaders, past and present. A hardworking man who always had time for his family, especially his children and activities. This man is Mark Anderson. Mark began work as a Bois Forte tribal attorney in the early 1990s. He worked as the MCT attorney and judge for other tribes, and the list goes on and on. Mark left us for the spirit world this past late fall, early winter. But he will always be remembered by those of us who had the privilege to be his friend or colleague. At this time, in honor of Mark Anderson, I would like to ask for a moment of silence. Miigwech. An urgent priority is a situation that has arisen with the Net River Dam. As we all know, the dam is important to and this is going to be a topic that's going to be debated by the other tribal leaders, to the best in the world wild rice, Bois Forte. Sorry guys, I had to put that in there. Our dam is now in a crisis situation where we need to do something or we will lose the dam, and with that goes our rice and our ducks. We will be seeking funding for a feasibility study to be done as soon as possible, and we'll be researching and viewing rock arch dams that are currently in place throughout the state. Once this is done, we will do what we can with as minimal possible disturbance to the lake to remedy the situation. On a good note, this year's rice crop was the best seen in years. It was so beautiful to see the field of rice across the lake. In my lifetime, I have never seen the lake look so good. It was just amazing. Ricing came and went with no storms, amazingly, taking the rice, and we, the tribal government, ended up purchasing 26,130 pounds of green wild rice. We're very happy to have that because we ran out of rice the past 2 years. Recently, Governor Walz has instructed the MPCA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and the DNR to begin working with all 11 tribes in the creation of a wild rice group that, from beginning to end, will have tribes involved in the process. One area that will also be discussed is a sulfate issue and its effects on wild rice. This is extremely important, as we all know the connection between our wild rice and to us as a people, and is also a huge part of our culture. We continue to look forward as we have found that the old way of doing things is not working, and we need to be creative and receptive to new ideas. Broadband internet is one new way of accomplishing things through technology. But sadly, most rural and tribal communities do not have access to broadband. I'm happy to announce that the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development awarded just this past Tuesday $23,270,933 in border-to-border broadband development grant program funds to 30 projects across the state of Minnesota. Bois Forte was awarded $1.2 million of these dollars towards upgrades. Special thanks to Mr. Rob Eklund, Representative Rob Eklund, for championing funding for these grants. Bois Forte's funding is for our Bois Forte Fiber to Home project. This project was first started approximately 5 years ago with an engineering study and design by Cooperative Network Services out of Monaga, Minnesota. This engineering design created a blueprint by which Bois Forte could use to advocate for funding and project acceptance. Several influential organizations helped advocate on behalf of the band for this project. They were the Northeast Service Co-op, the Blandin Foundation, and CTC Communications. And we were recently, Bois Forte was successful in applying to 3 different agencies for funding for this project. One was a deed grant, which I mentioned, through the state of Minnesota. The other was through IRRB. Thank you, Mark Phillips, Commissioner Phillips. And the other is a Shakopee Metawakan Sioux grant program. The Fiber to Home project, which is now 100% funded and will cost about $2.4 to $2.6 million, will be solely owned by the Bois Forte tribal government and allow the band to determine its own telecommunication future. There are several advantages to the band in proceeding with this project. It will provide high-speed internet, woohoo, and voice capabilities. It will put our students on equal technological ground as those students in cities and most rural areas. It can provide economic opportunities to companies either seeking to relocate or do business with the reservation or in northeastern Minnesota. It will enhance our medical facilities, allowing for a grander scope of telemedicine services. It will allow our band members the ability to telecommute to work. It will help reduce telecommunication, I'm really having trouble here. It will help reduce telecommunication costs to our existing businesses. It will create a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a permanent, lasting, and positive investment in the band's telecommunications future. At this time, I would like to ask everybody to congratulate and give a round of applause to our IT director, Randy Long, who put this project together. The flip side of that, Randy, is now the work really starts, okay? I have so much to report on, but I'm going to summarize it because I could talk forever and you guys will probably nod off. But these are some areas and projects that we need to either work on or move forward as a tribe. One, we will be revisiting the Bois Forte Strategic Plan and seeking funding for feasibility studies for economic development. We will be expanding our health and human services for all tribal employees at Bois Forte along with the general public. Thus, this currently is in the early planning stages, and I will strongly emphasize that this will not impact access to care for our tribal members. We will revitalize our honor guard for our veterans. We are in need of elderly units in Nett Lake and Vermilion. The original units are from 1970s and need to be replaced. Our elders deserve better. We will be also seeking funding for a new DNR building. Our current building is inadequate for staff and a huge safety issue. We need new technology and a new water quality lab, plus a new storage facility for our precious wild rice. Oh, thank you. Oh, good. Our Johnson Lake property in Ely, we are doing phases of funding applications for grants to transform and upgrade the site for cultural immersion capability. Our first phase is to acquire funding for generators, road upgrades, and more. The jail agreement with St. Louis County and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA has approved the contract, and it is now at the St. Louis County Legal for their approval. Once approved and signed and no change is made, our BIA police will be able to utilize the Virginia Hibbing jail facilities rather than being transported to Sherburne County, and we're now going in year 4 of this process. Continued support of the Minnesota Constitution reform and our Bois Forte delegates. The tribal government supports this through funding for rooms and travel. Anyone else interested in being involved with this, just write the tribal council a letter and we'll add you to the list of delegates. We have partnered, and I'm very happy to announce this, with Embarrass Vermilion Federal Credit Union and Northern Eagle Credit Union. We want to thank the members of both credit unions for approving this. It will offer many more services for our band members, such as checking and car loans, home loans, whatever. Our new website is in the process of becoming a reality. Soon we will be launching this updated version. I feel the biggest accomplishment, not only for Bois Forte, but all 11 tribes in Minnesota, is our relationship with the state of Minnesota. As you heard Governor Walz in his speech comment on Executive Order 1924, plus himself and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan and his commissioners attending the Tribal States Relations training, this has opened the door for the Minnesota tribes, and we are flooding the gates, if I may say that. It is such a great opportunity for us to be side by side, have our tribal liaisons in all 24 state agencies, and have meaningful consultation at the beginning rather than at the end. To now be included with funding appropriations because the departments now think of tribes along with cities and counties. I want to personally thank Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan to make one Minnesota. As I near the end of my speech, finally, there are two extremely important areas that I would like to end on. One is our culture and language. The loss of our culture and language is imminent unless we do something soon. Each year, we lose more elders and fluent speakers, and as of today, we have less than a handful of speakers left. We all know the loss of our language and culture resulted from the boarding school era, thus historical trauma. Our culture and language define who we are and is important to us. We need to start listening to our elders and recording their stories. More and more elders are walking onto the spirit world and taking this knowledge with them. We as a people must take the time and effort to do this and not rely on others to do it for us. Our children are our future, and we must do this for them and the generations after. I really have hope for our future. I see our young people becoming more involved. Our youth is a second important area I want to address. They are taking the initiative to be different, but also active in what they feel strongly about. We hired a young Bois Forte tribal member who had just graduated from the University of Minnesota. He approached the tribal council at an RTC meeting to ask us what our plans were for language and culture and any ideas we may have had. This young man is now our Heritage Center Director and acting Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. His name is Jalen Strong. He is an aspiring young man whose heart is immersed in our language and culture. He has taken the time to visit with Karen Drift, one of our fluent speakers and elders, learning the language, listening to her stories, and just sitting and visiting with her. He does this all on his own, even before he was hired as our director. He has never asked to be paid to do it. It is in his heart and soul. He is a bright star in a dim setting. This is hope. Many of us have heard about the young man from Mille Lacs who started Sober Squad. He was on a mission to help those with substance abuse. He took the initiative to be different and help others. Sober Squad has expanded to most all of the reservations and urban areas as well. I am very proud to acknowledge that we have 3 young people walking the sobriety trail and beginning our own Sober Squad. Those young people are David Squidge Morrison, Monica Porter, and Jennifer Medicine. They have meetings, thank you. They have meetings in Net Lake and Vermilion this past fall. There was also a smudge walk in both communities for healing. They have taken their stance that you don't have to use substances and being sober is okay. The road to say that being high is not the norm for anyone, and this brings hope for change, and we are really in support of that. This past year, Governor Walz, along with President Trump, signed into law the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Task Force. Too many Indigenous women have been killed or are missing, and it seemed as if nobody cared about it but us. Now we can be heard, and our women who have been forgotten or are still missing will hopefully find justice and peace. A young man from Bois Forte has taken upon himself to be involved with our language and culture, be a part of our drum group, and he is also one of the founding members of the band named War Bonnet. They were recently nominated for Best New Group of the Year for their album Ghost Dance, and Best Rock Recording with their single War Horse by the Native American Music Awards. Even though they did not win the award, they were honored to be nominated and recognized for their innovative music. This young man is Chaz Wagner. Chaz has recently released the music video Ikwe in November in honor of Native American Heritage Month. Ikwe is the Ojibwe word for woman. The video was also shot by Cecilia Martinez from Bois Forte, who as a high school student was involved in the In Progress program that uses photography and art for youth to express themselves. She is now an up-and-coming filmmaker, and we look forward to seeing her work in the future. We will be playing Chaz War Bonnet's video following our program today, so I hope you all enjoy it and watch it. It is amazing. I'm extremely proud of our youth and know there are many more out there becoming involved in issues that we all face daily. These are our future leaders and the future of our band. They are getting involved in our communities. Too often, it seems that we forget the past and how our communities used to be. We're all too busy. People used to help people, our neighbors, our friends, and our family. The loss of community seems to be looming over us. We cannot let this happen. This is not who we are as a people. Our youth and young people are showing us that this is a way that we need to return to. Not having to be paid to do something or help someone. We do it because we must help our elders, we must visit with them, listen to our historians. If we don't, it will all be lost, and we will be lost as well. I want to issue a challenge to every one of you here today. Please do a kind gesture, and hopefully they will do the same. Again, if we do nothing, change will not happen. It is up to all of us to make change. It can be something small or whatever you want to do. Do not be afraid. Change is good, but takes time. We must put our differences aside and come together as a community and as people. We are all family. We must make a change for our future. Chimigwich, and thank you all for coming today. Do I put my time?
Yes, it was. Thank you, Chairwoman Shavers. Next, I'd like to introduce and invite up to the stage Bois Forte District 1 Representative Shane Drift.
A little nervous up here. All right, here we go. Bushu, Mino, Onagoshin, Niwiji, Waganag. Shane, Indigenous cause. Asabiko ne saga igining and doon jaba, a dick doon dam. Nimin wendam, ayano ma. Taga, bagi day nishin. Bangi at the go, Ninata, Nishinabe Mawin. Mino Wabi Gin Akina Oma. What I said was, hello, good evening, my friends. Shane is my name. Nut Lake is where I'm from. Caribou is my clan. I'm happy to be here. Please forgive me, I only speak a little bit Indian language. Good to see you all here. Now, this one phrase I do love. I saw it on Facebook and I added on to it. Mi kwendam, de we win. Mikwendam Debwe. What that means is remember, speak the truth from the heart. And that's what I'm going to be doing tonight. Now I'll get on with my speech. Being a tribal leader is about keeping your word. I can tell you without hesitation that being a tribal leader is entirely about character. With that being said, each decision that I have made as a tribal leader has been made in the best interest of you, the band members, the businesses, the band, and our tribal government. I have been in office for 15 months now. I've learned a great deal about our tribal government, programs, businesses, casino, hotel, and golf course. And I have a great deal more to learn. These are just some of the things that I have worked on as your District 1 representative. I have pushed for the Tribal Council to build a financial reserve. We have started to build a financial reserve. We have taken a step in the right direction. We had the opportunity to make changes to the Health and Human Services Director's job description. I made the recommendation that the Health and Human Services Director use third-party revenue to build a financial reserve for that department. That recommendation was added to the responsibilities. I have also asked for a resolution to safeguard the Fortune Bay Employees Medical Fund. This resolution will ensure that the Fortune Bay Employees Medical Fund is only used for what it is intended for. I would like to say thank you to all our Fortune Bay employees and hotel employees for doing a good job. In my first few months in office, we were shown the siding on the casino and hotel. It didn't look that good. The siding needed to be changed. In order to accomplish this, we needed to take out a loan. I asked if the loan payments would impact the monies Fortune Bay gives to the tribal government. We were told no, that it would not impact the monies Fortune Bay gives to the tribal government. So I voted in favor of taking out the loan to reside our casino and hotel. The loan that we took out is in the best interest of our casino, hotel, and our future. I asked how long the new siding would last, and we were told that it would last 25 years. I said we have 25 years to set aside monies for the next siding project. Setting monies aside for the next siding project would be smart business. I would like to thank the MB Customs crew for all their hard work on the siding project. I have learned a great deal about the bidding process, projects, and the need for capital improvements. This is the second time that we had to make budget cuts. A couple of problems that I've noticed is that our expenses, requests, have gone up, while the amount of money we receive from Fortune Bay has increased, but not nearly enough. This situation will continue to repeat itself if we don't do something different. This is why we need to look at creating new businesses. The more revenue we have coming in will be better for our programs, our tribal government, and our financial health. As we decide on which business we want to pursue, we need to consider the following. What markets are stable? What markets are growing? What markets have the least amount of competition? Startup cost, location, customers, capital, assets. I pushed for a resolution that says for the Tribal Council, before the Tribal Council pursues a new business venture, that the Tribal Council must present the business idea before you, the band members, for your input, to ask questions, to make suggestions. This resolution is giving power back to you, the band members. When we met with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and also the Superior National Forest Service, I brought up the 1854 treaty area numerous times. We have two mining companies that are pursuing permits to mine in the 1854 treaty area. It's not a question if the mines will leak, but a question of when. In my humble opinion, the taxpayers will be the ones to foot the bill. Lutsen Mountain is expanding its skiing area. We also have people buying up property in the 1854 treaty area. The 1854 treaty area is getting smaller and smaller, yet our compensation is staying the same. I will continue to fight on your behalf. I'll continue to try and protect our natural resources in the 1854 treaty area. Some of our programs have made great strides in promoting the language and culture. KBFT 89.9 FM has Word of the Day, Phrase of the Day. They hold immersion camps. They also have a cradleboard making class coming up on February 28th, 29th, and March 1st. Lita Spears and the Indian Education Program have language classes every Tuesday night at the elementary school. Our elders always tell us that we need to do more with the language and culture. And they are right, absolutely right. So we need to pursue language and culture grants. Our elders tell us that we need to hear the language every day in order to learn it. Again, they are right. So I'm going to be sitting down with some key people and looking at developing a curriculum, and also to start recording, put that curriculum down on a CD for band members, to give to the band members so they can learn the language if they're interested. I also must mention that our midwinter powwow is on February 7th, 8th, and 9th in Nut Lake. Chimigwets to our powwow committees for doing all the hard work that you do. I'm always sharing ideas, either in person or on Facebook. I must point out that some of the ideas that I brought to the table came from band members. I would like to thank each and every band member that shared their ideas with me. You know, we as a tribal council, sometimes we don't always get along, but we are able to discuss, talk things out. And in my humble opinion, that's what makes us makes good teamwork. You know, sometimes it's hard. You know, because we have different agendas, different ideas, how things should be done. But it's the key thing is that is talking it through and discussing stuff. So in closing, I would like to say thank you to each of the following departments: Public Works, IT, DNR, Terrell, Duluth Urban Office, Minneapolis Urban Office, Education, Judicial, Accounting Department, Human Resources, Housing, the Police Department, our Ambulance Service, our Fire Department, the Boys and Girls Club, Forestry, the Heritage Museum, the Nut Lake Sea Store, the Y Store, Fortune Bay Resort Casino, the Wilderness, the Ledge, Northern Eagle Federal Credit Union. I'd also like to say thank you to our drum group and honor guard. Let's give them a round of applause. I would also like to say thank you to Louise Isham and the employees for doing an awesome job with this year's State of the Band. On a personal note, my door is always open to you, the band members. I look forward to talking with you and listening to what you have to say. I will always be here for you as your District 1 representative. On behalf of the Tribal Council and I, we wish you and your family safe travels home. Miu, miigwech, bizendawieg.
Thank you, Shane. I want to say thank you to all of our viewers on YouTube. We are live streaming on our YouTube channel. We also have a Nut Lake viewing station in Nut Lake. So thank you to everybody that's at the Nut Lake Government Building right now viewing the program. That concludes our formal program, so thank you to all the viewers. At this time, we'd like to play the music video.
Children of Mother Earth, pray for those with no guardian, that together we may stand vigilant against those who seek to harm them. We pray for courage. Our spirits are enraged because this world has not changed. Sisters, the mothers, for the daughters, and the wives. We pray for all Akwe who have lost their lives. We pray for answers, for truth. Most of all, we pray for their safe return. Protecting them, complications with jurisdiction. Tribal courts cannot prosecute criminals let off without conviction. Makes a target of Indigenous women. We pray for the taken to survive what they endure and rise above the ashes into a bright future. We pray they know they are not alone and are loved by all. We pray for days filled with joy and light, for that's what Mother Earth designed. We pray people come forward and stand up for what is right. And we pray for all mothers' children to sleep safe each night.
We'll get started with dinner. What we'd like to ask is if you have any elders at your table,